What is up, everybody? It's Dr. Vibe here, host and producer of the award-winning Dr. Vibe Show, the home of Epic Conversations, and I'm the host of Epic Conversations, 2018 Innovation Award winner, 2020 Best Podcast News Award winner given out by the Canadian Ethnic Media Association. I also co-host and co-produce the only online show in the world for dads, fathers, and male caregivers that's sponsored by Dove Men Plus Care. And as always, I'd like to say you are blessed, highly favored, a magnet for miracles, and a solution for someone's problem. And we're broadcasting on the last day of February 2026. And it's weird because okay, what just happened? Okay, that was interesting. I didn't touch anything. I'm innocent. I didn't touch anything. That's if you're watching. If you're listening to this on the replay, you'll go, what the heck is he talking about? You don't need to know. This is the last day of February 2026. And everyone I've chatted to recently, like even up to say, what's happened? This month has gone so quick. It has. It really has. But you know what doesn't go by quickly, and you need to just sit down. We're chatting about this before we went live, but sit down and listen. Sit down and listen. We were talking about sit down and listen to music. We're just talking about sitting down. You need to listen and check out Prime Time Saturday with Aisha and Lala. And I get around online a little bit, not too much. But there's not too many shows like this that have been going on for as long as that's been on a regular basis. Go figure. So you know what you got to do? You got to sit down and listen to Aisha and Lala. You got to sit down and listen to Aisha and Lala. And how are Aisha and Lala?
It's a lot going on, but we gonna push through.
Wow. So we were before we went live. I've just been a lot of reflection lately, and one of the things I said to Aisha and Lala, I said, you know what? We usually don't get together that often offline. Like usually like a day or two before the show, we kick back topics back and forth. And even in the last 24 hours, it changed. If you saw what it was originally to what it is now, and we could also change it again, it changed. But I said, you know what, Aisha and Lala, isn't it possible we can just hang out for a few minutes offline every week? So I put that in their lap, and they said, we'd love to. So I'm excited about that. I hope you are too, ladies.
Yes.
So, you know, they always say this thing from a book I read that I read once, what I call iron sharpens iron. So yes. I need my iron sharpeners, Staggers and Key. They're going to be my iron sharpeners. So if anyone wants to mess me up, I'm going to say, you go and deal with them first. What's going on, ladies? How we doing? What's cracking?
Well, I had my birthday this week, so I did. I'm 56, so I'm really happy about that. I had a very peaceful and lovely day, and I made it a point. I made no plans. I just wanted to just get up and just let the day flow the way that it wanted to flow. I had my favorite food. I had Korean food.
What did you have?
Korean food. I had kimbap and japchae.
What's that?
Yeah,
I'm totally out of league on what is that.
Kimbap is a little round. It's sort of like sushi, but there's a Korean radish in it that's really good. So that's kimbap, and you could get it done with bulgogi, which is a meat that you could put in there. And then japchae is kind of glass noodles with meat and Korean vegetables and this beautiful, lovely sauce. So it was really nice.
I feel so uncultured.
You got to find a Korean restaurant in Canada.
Oh, well, we got lots of them, but I'm going to have to now check that out. I have to check that out. So we'll take that as your win. So Aisha, give us a win you've had in the last week.
This might not seem like a win, but for me it is. I found out I have 2 hernias. And nobody told me. I just have to look at my chart.
That's a
Oh,
win.
wow.
Wait, I had these two before. They just have to be repaired again. So April, late March and April for me are looking like months. I'm just gonna rest.
Rest.
I'm actually sitting here looking forward to it. There's a job that I was applying, legislative commission position, right? And I didn't get it. And I was not upset about it because I found out like just before that I had the hernias. And I'm like, you know what? This is a reason. This is for a reason.
Yeah.
I won't have to rush and put it off, because the thing is, when you get into those new positions, you kind of are like, okay, now I have to push everything off because, I got 30 days. And I was like, okay, now I can just focus on this. And I'm like, I'm really looking forward to the surgery and both surgeries, because I'm having two, but just the fact it's going to force me to slow down
To rest.
and
Yes.
rest and tune out. And I'm actually just quite grateful. And I was talking to our friend Jill yesterday, and she said, you know what, you sound really good. Like you have doctors that you really feel like you're in good care. I'm like, yes, for the first time, I think in a long time, I feel like I'm in very good hands medically. And for me, that is a win.
Oh, that's huge. That's really, really, really huge. When you can feel safe when it comes to your health or your health diagnosis, it's a huge win, because I don't think many people can say that these days.
Yeah, I saw it, and then I called UConn Health. They're excellent. If you are in Connecticut, UConn Health, they are very good at trying to get you resolved quickly. I called them. I said, hey, I just learned I had these hernias. I got to have them fixed. And they were like, okay, can you come in on the 5th? I was like, oh, that's next week.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
For the consult. And I was like, okay. So,
wow.
yeah, so that's a good thing for me. And I'm just like, you know what? And then the two teams want to work together because it's all in that same region.
Nice.
And, I got, I'm just really feeling good about the healthcare I've gotten lately. And to know that you're going to be well and that you've got people listening to you and responding to you after me for almost a year, trying to get someone to listen. There's nothing like it.
Nice. I like that. Man, do we need to do a show after that? No, like really, I don't know if we're going to get as good as news as we just heard. Well, we will by the end. I think by the end, we'll get up the mountain, but that's great. All right. Well, what we'll do, we'll take a quick break, and when we come back, we'll do some housekeeping, and then we're going to get into it was an old song by a group called Never Ending Story. I think the news these days is a never ending story. But we'll be back in 30 seconds.
Check out Black Men Can Talk live on Sundays at 8 p.m. Eastern, where Dr. Vibe, Kofi Sadat, and Kofi Morris, where Black Canadian men come together to have real, unfiltered conversations about life, culture, and community.
Watch Black Canada Talking live on Sundays at 5 p.m. Eastern, where Dr. Vibe and Cesar Diva Musa give their takes and POVs on news stories from a Black Canadian perspective.
All right, we're back on Primetime Saturday.
Nice ads, Dr. Vibe.
Oh, well, thank you. And you're on mute, Lala. You're going like, but I love when you're on mute because your face is so expressive. What's up?
I'm not getting them. It's telling me there's an error on my side for the browser.
That's okay. Well, the most of the audience is getting, but no, I have to say, yes, a little bit my part, and intern Ming, who's doing an incredible job. So when you see those promos, I give him the raw and he puts them together.
Nice.
So Ming is, and also he's helping up on the live broadcast. So thank you, Ming. You are appreciated. I also want to get some stuff out of the way. So Girlfriends Chat with Aisha, Lala, and Jill Jones was on Patreon. It's still there. Was on Substack. It's still there. One day I want to say it's on YouTube also, but it'll get there in due time. The Primetime Saturday store, there is the link there. Join the Discord group. Email me at dr.vibe at the drvibeshow.com or click on that link. Subscribe to the Dr. Vibe Show and hit the notification button. That's for YouTube. And there's been massive YouTube growth, especially because of these two ladies and Dr. Tachi over the last few weeks. That's why I want them to have their own platform so we can help drive it up with the people that watch this. That's why I'm pushing, because I want to see them win too. Because I if they win, I win, and vice versa. And also like the Dr. Vibe Show on Facebook, LinkedIn, Instagram, TikTok, Blue Sky, and Substack. If you want to advertise your business, there we go, your business product or service on any of the platforms I'm on, email me. And again, she was here calling in. Man, Dr. Tachi's been around lately, whether it's on screen or calling in, she's been around. And rightfully so, because she powers Indie Soup TV. It's an independent content creators platform with about over 28,000 YouTube subscribers, which puts that YouTube channel in the top 4% of all YouTube channels when it comes to subscribers. And also there is the website. And I think that is it for now. We are going to get right into our first story because it's ever changing by the moment, and what we say now could probably be past history. So let's get into our first conversation piece, and we'll give you let's get a little bit of a background intro, and then we're going to get right into it. So here we go.
We're breaking down the bombshell. The U.S. and Israel just launched massive strikes on Iran, hitting nuclear sites, missile stockpiles, and even near Supreme Leader Khamenei's compound. President Trump calls it major combat operations under Operation Epic Fury, urging Iranians to rise up and topple their regime. Is World War III at our doorstep? Let's unpack this fast. What happened? Israel's jets dropped hundreds of bombs on 500 targets in western and central Iran, crippling missile defenses and factories. The U.S. joined with drones and airstrikes on key nuclear facilities like Natanz and Fordow, plus naval assets. No American casualties reported yet. Iran hit back hard. Missiles and drones slammed U.S. bases in Iraq, Jordan, Bahrain, UAE, Kuwait, and Saudi Arabia, plus Israel. Smoke's rising in Tehran, and Netanyahu hints Khamenei might be gone. Trump says it's about nukes, missiles, proxies like Hezbollah, and regime change since 1979. World War III risks. This isn't isolated. Iran's axis of resistance could ignite the Middle East. Hezbollah from Lebanon, Houthis in Yemen, militias in Iraq and Syria. Russia already condemned it as aggression, warning of regional war. Iran vows to keep striking until the U.S. and Israel are defeated, risking oil shocks, global markets crashing, and drafts pulling in more powers. Analysts fear multi-front chaos, state failure, ethnic wars spreading. Trump's playbook echoes Iraq 2003, but amps it up. Will it spark World War III or force peace? Takeaways and call to action. Bottom line, U.S.-Israel aim to gut Iran's threats, but retaliation's live. Watch for escalation. For our community, this hits energy prices, jobs, security. Stay informed, empowered. What do you think? Bold move or powder keg?
All right, our first conversation piece, and it's ever changing, is U.S. and Israel attack Iran, World War III coming. And before I do that, we have to hail up Jen Myers. Says hello, everyone. So hello, Jen Myers. Good to see you as always. All right, ladies, where are we starting on this one?
Well, to answer that first question, I don't think it's going to be World War III. One, because apart from Israel, we're basically going this alone. Europe is like, we want no parts of this. A lot of the Asian countries are like, we don't want to get involved in that. So I think this is, again, going to be a situation like, Iraqi freedom. And the challenge I think that we have right now, the reporting, I'm looking at it on my TV thing on my phone too. They are saying that Iran's supreme leader is dead. However, remember back in 2001, 2002, 2003, with all of the conflicts in the Middle East under the Bush administration, remember when Bush went over there, did his bombing, and then came back and said, we're what was it, mission accomplished with the banner, and then it was 20 more years of war beyond that. I think declaring any kind of mission accomplished now, when we don't really know what the aftermath is going to be. But I mean, because he said it this morning in his video that there could be American casualties. And so this is very serious. We're going to end up having troops on the ground. There's what it sounds like when you say something like that. It does imply that there are going to be some troops on the ground, which is also a very scary thing, because one of the things that I think we could agree on across political divides is that we don't want our military, our young men and women, to have to go into these places that without a clear after strategy, first of all, but to have to go into these places for uncertain amounts of time and face injury and or possible death. And I think the thing that most stuck out to me this morning as I was driving my daughter to work, it's like 6 o'clock, so this was all just going on and I'm listening. The thing for me that I heard that I think should scare us all is when he says that, once the leader's dead, and even though Iran is denying that, but once their leader's dead, then the Iranian people can just go in and take over their government and rule. That's not a strategy. Who does that? How do they organize that? Do they have the military capabilities necessary to do that? Because remember, you take out the leader, there are still other people in the process. First of all, I want to say this. I don't think anybody should still be in power from 1979 currently. That to me is absurd. That is absurd. But there's the plan for the people. What is the plan for the people? And then telling those people to go and take that over, you're telling them that they've already been dying by the thousands. You're telling them that they're going to have to die more. More of them are going to have to die to do that. And so that for me is a very, not so much a sticking point, but it's a question that I have about, well, what is the plan after these strikes? What is the on the ground plan and then there's the other thing that I am concerned about. How much is it going to cost? And you can't say, well, we'll go in there, take the oil and the minerals, and then that'll pay for it. Well, no, because remember, they're doing these things without having the funding from Congress. So I want to know where the money came from in the first place. And second of all, we do know that the president does have a American bank account over in Saudi Arabia that some of these funds have been deposited to, like some of the money from the tariffs. And so, but and be clear, he's also the only one that has access to that. If it's America's money, why is he the only one that has access to that when Congress has the power of the purse? So I just have a lot of questions. And I don't think that our news media has been asking any of the questions that American people have, particularly those who have servicemen and women in their family.
The media is not going to ask those questions because look who has bought it all up. The average person watches the regular stuff and they still don't understand just how all these mergers and who owns what and who's controlling what is controlling the narrative that what they're hearing about. So the media is not going to call him out. This is when you have to start searching for the independent reporters and media that are reporting the truth. What this administration is trying to do with this is they're trying to sell this as protection and as deterrent and make it a stop sign for Iran's nuclear ambitions, because we all know Iran keeps saying, we got them, we're going to use them. And then what they're doing is, like Aisha said, they're stoking the fires because they're literally saying that that the people should now rise up and topple their own government. Y'all, that's not a defense. That's pressure for complete political collapse. We have no business in any other country's political collapsing. Ours is collapsing. It's already dead, right? So in real life terms, this is going to spread fast. We've already seen retaliations. Iran has always had conflict going on. This is nothing new. This is nothing new that we've seen. But this administration is just determined to continue to insert themselves where they don't belong. We literally do not belong in this. But, they want to continue to say that they are for peace. But you've already lit the fires now. So when you strike a regional power, you have started the chain. Now the chain is going down line, and we, the people, the world is now going to suffer. And you're right, Aisha, the European people are like, what the fuck? That literally, they're just like, they're really lost. But you also have to remember, there's many other things that are going on behind the scenes. First of all, he's put our troops in massive danger for no reason, for his own free folly, and for whatever he's trying to cover up. We won't get into that today, but let's not be stupid. We know what all these things really are trying to cover up, because it's getting hot, baby. It's getting hot. Them seats is burning, because people are really telling the truth. Like the Clintons went in, they did what they needed to do and was not quiet about it. So this is another smokescreen. So listen, the global economy is actually sitting on like a tripwire with what goes on with the Strait of, I can never say this country, is Hormuz. And that's a huge amount of like global moves where money goes through, radio warnings, all those things that are going through there. So they're hitting key targets to keep things in check. You have to also remember that there's a lot of oil, a lot of minerals that are going through. Now, why did we hit Venezuela? Can you see how all of this is coming in? All for one man's folly. And who's going to control the money? Like Aisha said, baby, he's got his hands in all these pots. He was the first one to say that he was going to be taking over and looking at all the money that came from Venezuela. But then he got smacked in the head, because a lot of people were like, well, you don't really want to touch that oil, right? So he doesn't know what he's doing. He has clowns in his administration that are just going on the folly. The Department of War is a joke. Meanwhile, our military is the one that's going to be the ones that are going to suffer the most, because our military is dedicated and they're going to go by their orders. But like he said, some people are going to die. Well, okay, let's go ahead and get Barron lined up.
Well, that's also like the thing, which brings us right back to why were they so incensed about those congressmen and women saying that the military men and women do not have to follow illegal orders. I was very concerned about that. But you know what else scares me more about this too is this year marks two things. The 250th anniversary of the country's quote unquote founding, and also 25 years since 9/11. We were already like facing threats for those two events, retaliation. And now this really scares me that, are we even more at risk for an attack on our land? And I'm more concerned about how that pans out for us too, because if what happened with the drone a few days ago, and this is not the military's fault, it is the people at the very top, the secretaries who are in charge of these. They don't communicate. If Pete Hegseth can order a drone flying around at the border of Texas, only to find out it was a Customs and Border Control drone, which DHS oversees it, and they shut down the airspace. The second time they had to shut down the airspace because the other time was a balloon. These departments aren't even talking to each other.
No.
And we have to be afraid from, attacks from other countries coming here. Our departments aren't communicating with one another. And then passenger plane, if they're going to shoot down a drone and it belongs to us, what's to say the next thing is not going to be a passenger plane? And that terrifies me that we're we might have a quote unquote closed border on the south, but we've got 3 other borders.
Yes, we do.
And remember, 9/11 happened at the border on this side of the country, not the south.
By the way, that drone was $30 million.
Yeah.
That's your taxpayer money.
If I have,
$30 million.
so if I have permission to interrupt, Dr. Tati says happy Saturday. So she's in the house, and also says a whole administration full of court jesters and court fools. So,
Yeah.
so Dr. Tati, you know, as always, so if you want to call in, you can always call in. No problem. I want to ask, just put out some points here. Wasn't it a few months ago, allegedly, the U.S. had wiped out all of Iran's nuclear?
June, right? We totally obliterated it. And we're supposed to believe that in 6 months they were able to go back to full capacity. But remember what they said back in June. They not only totally obliterated the facilities, but they said they got down into the ground where their sources were. So if anyone knows how long it takes to get these kinds of minerals like this, it's not 6 months.
You got
not to have it and then have refined it and then have it prepped and ready to make a weapon.
So I also, another conversation point I want to ask both of you, is the U.S. the lead on this, or is Israel the lead on this?
It looks like Israel was the lead on it, and then the U.S. joined in.
Surprise, surprise.
Right. And here's the other part of it too. The belief that this is going to be like Venezuela. Well, Venezuela, he said it was regime change then. There's no regime change. It's just the second person in line who's now the interim president. That the government of Venezuela didn't change. And I have a feeling that we're looking at the same thing here.
Yeah, because I was reading some reports that I think a week or so ago, the Iranian government were meeting and choosing backup people.
Right.
So, yeah, it's good that that they allegedly this gentleman has been killed, but they've got someone to replace him.
Right. And you know what? I think that Americans in particular, we assume that other nations, brown nations especially, don't have the sophistication to have backup plans to backup plans. Like we have a secession. We have an order of whoever succeeds, right? An order of succession. Whoever succeeds the president. If something happens to the president, the vice president, then it's the speaker, and down and down and down and down, right? We assume that other nations aren't that sophisticated and don't have that kind of plan, particularly Black and brown ones. And guess what? They do. And let's be very clear. We're the country who's new to this with that order of secession. When was it that they really finally established it? Was what, after Kennedy was killed? When they really started going deep into how far back? We forget that these other countries we're dealing with are a lot older than America. 250 years. We're a baby nation.
We ain't out of diapers in no kind of way.
These governments are older, and these countries are older than we are. And so I think that we have to get out of that mode of thinking that, oh yeah, they're not going to have. No, you know what? I always operate in that you prepare for the best and expect the worst, right? Because if you're going to expect the worst, even though you're prepared for the best, put that aside. But if you expect the worst, you have a backup plan to the backup plan, and a backup plan to the backup plan to the backup plan. You have A, B, C, D all the way down. And I feel like we don't have that with this. Because it seems like our backup plan is once the head of this regime is out the way, then the people, like he said, the people rise up and take over your government. With what weapons when they were already being killed on the street? That military doesn't go away just because the head dies. It's the same in the United States. If Trump got sick and was out, the military doesn't stop being the military just because he has to take 2 weeks off, right? So to assume that other nations don't operate that way is a big fallacy for us. And I think it's very short-sighted on the part of the administration.
But it's always short-sightedness with them. It's never really a plan other than more power. It's never a plan unless I'm going to stamp my name on it. Yeah. It's never another plan unless it's going to line my pocket. So the underlying factors to all this is just greed and power. Right. There is no other reason. The rest of the world is like, what? We have no idea. We do know, but go ahead, play your little games. And this is going to turn around and bite us in the ass. Yeah. Because this really makes it vulnerable for us.
Yeah. And let me say this one point about the media. In his 8-minute remarks, Trump called it war. If the media continues to call it a military conflict, no, you use that man's language. He's calling it war. He's looking at it as war. Use his language, because the fact of the matter is that only Congress can declare war.
Which they're all scrambling to get back now.
But only Congress can declare war. And that's the thing, because independent strikes, yeah, but this is going to shape up, unfortunately, to be a war. And that's why there are so many people on the right. I watched some people on the right, podcasters and things. They're not happy about this. I don't think any of us should be happy about this, because there was no justification made. And here's the thing. He had a whole State of the Union address on Tuesday where he could have spent that time, that hour and 47 minutes, making the case for this to the American people, explaining to us we don't need to know the details and get in the weeds of those things, because those things do need to stay classified, how our military is moving, but explain to us what's the rationale, what's your evidence, what's the plan, what is the plan? And how much do you think it's going to cost so we can be prepared? How do you anticipate this happening? Because best believe Congress they're trying to head back to DC today, but Monday, the stock market is going to drop. If you remember after 9/11 and when Bush first went in there, it plummeted. Then when we went into Iraq, because let's be very clear. What we did after 9/11, that was about retaliation for an attack on our country. Iraq was about nothing. Iraq was about a lie. We did not need to go into Iraq, just like right now we don't need to go into Iran. And Iran, because I had to go back and look, Iran is more dangerous than Iraq. Their military is stronger and more massive than Iraq's. So we're not talking about fighting, going into Venezuela, whose army is not as strong as ours. We're like almost close to match, and that needs to be a wake up call to all of us. Especially,
all right, if I permit to jump in here,
in the military.
Person here says Iran is too small for World War III. Dr. Tati says, exactly, Aisha. That comes from their skewed sense of American exceptionalism. Another person here says, declaration of war is not the same as war. Attack. Also, they say declaration of war is sending troops to invade. And then Dr. Tati says, at the very least, put it on signal so we can find out by mistake.
But they also have 10,000 troops on the ground already. So they are prepared to go in. I mean, let's be very clear. Declaration of war is not war. In the United States, yes, read your Constitution. Only Congress can declare war. He is calling it a war. And that's where he gets into trouble. Okay, you got to remember
Into
it's
trouble.
it's a legal definition, right? That's where he gets into trouble with the people, because it is illegal. Let's be clear: we have to parse out our common uses of words with the legal definition of words. And when you are running an administration and a government, you rely on the legal definition of words. And he's using the words war. If you remember if you go back to like even the Bay of Pigs and things like that, it felt like we were in the Cold War and things like that. We're doing these strikes. JFK never called it a war. It was always a conflict. Think about Vietnam, right? Vietnam was never officially considered a war. It was a military conflict, which is why I'm like the media has to start using his words, because what they're doing is covering. And
Okay,
but let's make this clear too, Aisha. Like, they may be doing that, but the general American right now don't even understand that.
Right.
That's the problem. The American people pretty much parrot whatever side they want to parrot,
right,
without understanding the language, the underlying procedures. You don't have to have a degree in it, but the problem is you don't know how our country is ruled. You don't know the rules of war. You don't know the terminology. So instead of parroting, how about you at least pull out something and learn something about it before you speak on it? Because the problem is you're taking the rhetoric on down the line. This chain will never stop unless people start to at least educate themselves on what this really means.
Right. And the reason I'm making that sticking point, because the moment he uses that word, it then becomes an issue for Congress. He did something unilaterally without Congress's input, and that becomes a problem, because he's not going to be able to. If this is the case, he can say it's a conflict, right? We're in a conflict, military conflict, and Congress has no responsibility to hold him accountable for that. The moment that he used the word war, it becomes a congressional issue. And I'm not saying that that's necessarily what we're in, but it shows you that he doesn't know the wording that he is supposed to use as the leader. And that should be concerning to us all.
Okay, let me jump in. No, we got another person here saying, when you have a regime fighting America for 47 years, too many incidents have happened to Americans. Dr. Tachi also says, agreed. Mainstream corporate media outlets are covering because they have either been transferred over into the hands of people friendly to the administration, or they are trying not to poke the bear.
At that last point, I have a question though. We've been fighting. Iran has been fighting us for 47 years.
Well, I was going to ask another, just a general question in the world today, and I'm not anti-American. I'm just putting out there: does America have a right to tell people you can't build nuclear?
No, we don't have a right to tell any country how to run their country. There are consequences in the world for doing that.
Yeah,
but we are not the popo for every country.
I worry about that too, because here's the thing. What stops our former allies from getting together and saying that the United States needs to not have nuclear weapons when you have an unstable leader right now? This is the thing. First of all, we have not been fighting Iran for 47 years. Okay, because if that were the case, there wouldn't have been Iraq. We would have just gone straight into Iran. So get that out of your head. I have no idea where you're getting that. The regime has been in place for 47 years. We have not been fighting them for 47 years. But the idea that we are the overseers of the world, that thought and that idea is very much plantation thinking, right? That we're going to be the overseers of the world with the whip in our hands, and people, these countries that we consider beneath us need to comply. I really do. What happens if we step on the wrong toes of people that we used to be allies with, which we are. We're talking about, oh, we're going to take Greenland. Canada needs to be the 51st state. We're pissing people off. What happens when all the people pissed off at this country get together and say, the United States needs to not have nuclear weapons? It is very easy for us to say things like this when even though we had attacks on 9/11, we have not had a physical war on this land since 1865, 1863. I mean, there are people. How would this? I mean, I feel there are people still living on the ground, living life. It's not that there's just this leader and ruler there in their military, and then we're going to go bomb. They're bombing people's places of faith. They're telling people, oh, go home and shelter in place. Yeah, but you might bomb my apartment building. And
they've already hit a school.
Yeah,
they've already hit a school.
Yeah,
children.
Yeah, and there are those kinds of things that I think, like what Dr. Tachi said, we get American exceptionalism so far and so deep into our heads that it doesn't allow us to see how lucky we really have been to not have had that. And that, I don't believe that has anything necessarily to do with our strength and might, but that the West, this over here, is really isolated from the other continents in the world there, which are pretty in close proximity, and I think that right there is what protects us more than anything.
All right, let me jump in with Dr. Tachi says, answering to my questions, he says, no, America does not. Another viewer says the United States is led by a convicted, I'm not going to say that word because YouTube me, because the way it is, convicted felon, insurrectionist, admitted sexual predator, adulterer, and pedophile, named in the Epstein files founders of time. Another person says, yeah, it's disgusting.
Yeah. And I think when you look at that part about our leader, much of which is true, that we have facts on the adulterer and those kinds of things, right? Who are we to be the moral authority of the world?
Well, there's another question. Another person here says the U.S. bullying countries with military actions increases the dangers of terrorism against millions of U.S. citizens living outside the country tremendously. And another person says, yeah, Americans are sheltered. Then as we start winding down this conversation, ladies, what is going to be the impact for Americans, especially if this, because I can't see this just being a one and done thing today.
No, I don't think so either.
What is going to be the impact on Americans over the next short term and long term?
Well, the man that people said, the people who claimed it was the cost of eggs, and the man who was going to get all the prices down, you can expect some prices to skyrocket. People forget that we get a lot of things from over in that region of the world. So those prices are already going to go up, and tariffs are already on them. You can expect higher tariffs, and then the cost of gas is going to go up. If you don't, here's the thing, if you need a refresher as to how this goes, look at America from 2003 to 2008. And remember what happened at the very, very end of that in 2008. The banks needed to be bailed out. The housing market crashed. Gas went sky high. So, yeah, buckle in. It's going to
literally at that time, and we're going to see it again. This is not a scare tactic. This is not some conspiracy. Listen, I worked through that. I got into real estate when that happened. When I say literally every other house in brand new communities that were being built, and I was in Denver at the time, were HUD and foreclosures. every last one of them. I thought to myself, boy, what a good time to get into real estate. Like I really thought that I was like, how did I get into this when this is going to crash? I made it work for me. But still, the situation is we are going to see that under this administration. I'm not sorry to tell you, because it's the truth. We've been telling you this for a very, very long time. What really bothers me, Dr. Vibe, and I there's going to be ramifications to our country for many, many years. Long after we're gone, we're going to be learning about some things that were done in this administration that we had no idea about. And that happens it's happened in many other countries as well. I'm not lessening it. What bothers me and upsets me the most is the type of comments that I've been seeing today online. Now, I typically give myself some peace with line, and I back up sometimes from social media, but of course I wanted to see what was going on today in the world. And so many of these hardcore mega cult people are applauding this.
Yeah.
And the problem with that for me is, how dare you applaud one single life of one of our soldiers who shouldn't be over there at all? This was completely unprovoked. Like I said, it's power. It's all about power and whatever they can get out of it to line their pockets. But you're still going to have this division in America, and a house divided will not stand.
Yeah.
So I do believe they're lessening and lessening. A lot of them are like, what is going on now? Some of them, but there are still some hardcore people. It really bothers me that someone literally said, good, we're at war, let's go. And I said, where's your son or daughter? Are they suited up? Oh, you don't have one? Okay, I guess you need to go and suit up. How offended they were when I suggested that they go and serve in the military and serve with their lives, but it's okay for others. This is a problem. I have so many nieces and nephews, young mothers, just now having babies and starting their life in the military. Yes, they have made the choice to be in the military, but to go for a folly and a sham like this, that's not okay.
And let's be very clear, despite what you heard, when you do the research, the military has seen a drop in its recruitment. And when that happens, and that's as a result of having these forever wars. And when that happens, what does the Department of Defense and the government do? They institute a draft. That is the thing that in the Gulf War, when we were young and teens, that was scary for us. It was scary after 9/11. But just one last comment, and I'm done. And yeah, I'm done. One last comment. For the people saying, oh, I didn't vote for this. Well, people did try to tell you. It was in Project 2025. And what they said was they wanted maximum pressure and direct military conflict in Iran. I guess we're now at 55% accomplished.
That isn't the number.
A few more comments. We'll move to our next conversation, Pete. So someone says only racists and bigots are supporting 47 now. Another person says no new wars. He lied. I feel for you guys. Hitler, Trumpenstein. It's sad. Starlight's in Space. Where are you living? Okay.
I don't know, but you just gave me a new word. I love that. I love that.
Hold on.
I love that, Starlight.
Hold on.
And you know, I think too,
have
we are
here too. Are you here? Caller.
Where they want?
I think
they want to control the oil.
Chachi?
Yes.
Oh boy. Oh boy. Now it's really gonna begin.
Oh.
Do I need to get up and leave?
You might need to make some space. But,
Okay, before you speak, I'm going to give you a second. I just want to finish off these comments. They want Contrim of the oil pathway. Another person said,
I think it's supposed to be controlled.
well, I'm going to skip Dr. Tachi's comment because she's on now. And we have someone on. I asked where this person, Starlight Zen Space, is located. She's in Canada. All right, good. Dr. Tachi, do your stuff.
Yes, well, of course, I love to come on with my dear brother and my sisters. So, hello to all of you. Uh, this whole thing, though, I have to say, though we are the progenitors of this, the U.S. are the progenitors of this. You know how a bully becomes a bully when people keep giving them lunch money, him or her lunch money.
Mhm.
And you continue to bow down without without any repercussions. So I also blame, although not as much, but I also blame the other countries who have continued to let us inflate ourselves
Yeah.
to this state that we're in now. And so I keep looking, when these things continue to happen, when these inflammatory statements continue to be made, I watch Europe, right? Because they're the main ones I'm looking at in terms of allowing this. I watch Europe, and you're not going to say anything?
Right.
Well, they're our friends. We will continue to. No! Maya Angelou said, when someone shows you who they are, believe them the first time. And you are going off of what's happening now is that quickly it's eroding, but we've been continuing to live on our laurels for a very long time. So it's like the Hollywood star who was the biggest thing in movies in the 80s. And then now they're trying to come back and do the same thing. It's like, okay, well, you're not a big star anymore. This is not, there are other people, we've moved on, right? So, but we keep inflating ourselves as if we're this big star. Once upon a time, perhaps, but now we're not. And so the thing is, you keep being nice and giving us fodder. Oh, well, they were a star before. We can put them in the next movie. Okay, you put them in the next movie. They put us in the next movie, and you see what's happened. The movie flopped. Mm-hmm. So I blame the other countries as well who continue to let us do that. And it's interesting because it's only rubbish that you would accept from certain people. They continue to accept the rubbish from a Western country like us, but let somebody else do something. Let a country of the global South do something and see how quickly they pounce.
Right.
All right.
Here's the thing too. We're a lot like the stinky kid in the class who doesn't know they stink. And
Lala, we may have just lost Lala. Lala, are you still with us?
And everybody, and this kid has such high self. Look around and everybody is kind of avoiding them, and they don't know why. And the other people talk about them behind their back, but that stinky kid has no self-awareness to know that, hey, they stink. And the fact is that if those people said it to the face, their feelings would be so hurt, right?
Lala, do you need a glass of water or something?
I mean, that one just took me out because it's so true.
Okay.
But that's literally how we're walking the earth, right? Without the self-awareness that, and I get that. What creeps in me, it's a feeling that gives me discomfort is when we say we're the greatest country in the world. And I'm like, wait, why can't everybody be great? Why do we have to be the greatest in the world? It's like, also too, if you've ever been a teacher, particularly with little kids, and you tell them to line up, you know who the bully is by the person that tries to run to be the first in line.
All right,
That's
Dr. Tachi wants to add, then we're going to move to our next conversation piece. Go ahead, Dr. Tachi.
Yes, two quick things. So to the not so fresh child in the class, the thing is that we continue to give that not so fresh child the benefit of the doubt. So sometimes, right, there's reasoning behind why that child is so unfresh. But rather than trying to find out why, we keep giving the benefit of the doubt, where it's like, oh, well, maybe their parents don't have soap. Maybe the water has been turned off and we don't know, right? But instead of actually trying to ascertain the real reason for it, now we are finding out, no, this child is just lazy and doesn't want to take a bath.
Right.
All right. Comments. Go. You had a second one, Dr. Taj. You said you had two things. That was the first one.
It was, and I can't remember the second.
Okay, I know you will.
But they took me out with the unfresh child.
Wow.
Now, I like the fact that she's using the phrase unfresh.
Well, you know, Dr.
Yeah.
Tachi has her own vernacular, unfresh child. I love that. All right. She also said in the comments, the heck you didn't vote for this. This is on everyone who voted for King Wiglet. Starlet from Canada says, sorry, it hit her Trumpenstein. All right. And then another person says, only racists to whiten up America by deporting and locking up people of color are supporting 47 now. Starlight Zen Space loves that the laughter that's going on here. And also says, like dirty diaper dementia, Don the Con. Oh my gosh.
You know what I worry about too? I worry too. I worry about the thing that this little hands of Stephen Miller in this. Like, some of this is also looking for a place to put people he doesn't want in this country. So at the tail end of that, let's keep that on the back burner in your head.
Okay. We also have someone here saying hello from London, UK. Good to have you here from London, UK. And we are going to move now to our next conversation piece. And I know, Dr. Tachi, please hang around because we love having you here. So let's introduce our next conversation piece. And it's right up your alley, too.
Today, we're diving into one of the biggest shakeups Hollywood's seen in decades, the Paramount Warner merger. That's right, two giants, the studio behind Mission Impossible, Top Gun Maverick, and CBS, joining forces with the powerhouse behind Batman, Harry Potter, and CNN. On the surface, this merger looks like a blockbuster deal. But beneath the glamour lies a story about survival, streaming, and the future of entertainment. Why this happened. Let's break down why this merger happened. Both Paramount and Warner have struggled to keep up in the new media landscape. The old Hollywood model movie theaters and cable bundles has been replaced by streaming wars. Netflix, Disney Plus, and Amazon Prime now dominate people's screens. Paramount Plus and Max, formerly HBO Max, couldn't stand alone forever. Their subscriber growth slowed and debt from content production piled up. So, instead of competing, they're combining resources to create a stronger player that can actually challenge Disney and Netflix, one studio with a vast library, global distribution, and unified technology. What it means. The merger creates a new entertainment powerhouse that controls some of the most iconic franchises in history. Think of the new combined catalog: Star Trek, Harry Potter, DC Comics, Mission Impossible, Transformers, South Park, and Game of Thrones. That's a dream for fans, but a concern for creators, actors, and regulators. Fewer studios means less competition and fewer bidding wars for new talent. And in Washington, antitrust watchdogs are already sharpening their pencils, worried this merger could concentrate too much media power in one company. Still, inside Hollywood, some say this consolidation was inevitable. The streaming business is expensive, and only a handful of global giants can survive it. What's next? So, what's next? Expect layoffs, lots of restructuring, and some brand reshuffling. Paramount Plus and Max will likely merge into one supersized platform, though the name and rollout are still unclear. For audiences, it might mean more convenience, one subscription for a massive library. But for Hollywood workers and mid-sized studios, it's another reminder that the golden age of streaming is over and survival now means consolidation. One thing's certain, the Paramount Warner merger isn't just business. It's the latest chapter in a bigger story, the transformation of Hollywood itself. What do you think this means for the future of storytelling?
All right. Paramount Warner merger. And I'm glad Dr. Taj is with us because this is up her alley. But I think that what do you
Can I tell a story?
Pardon me?
Can I tell a story?
Sure.
Okay. So 30 years ago, there was this man named Prince. And Prince had issues with his record label, Warner
Warner
Brothers,
Brothers.
which now is has divested, they're separate, it's an independent label. But he told us about the consolidation of power, starting with the record labels. They had started out as the Big Seven, the seventh being the only independent label, Motown, to have the kind of mass appeal as the others. Then when Motown was sold to MCA, they became the Big Six. They're now, the record labels are now the Big Three, about to be only two, being Sony and Universal.
Yeah.
And everything else just falling, all the other independent labels or smaller labels folded up under those two. He warned us 30 years ago, and everybody called him crazy. He got basically blackballed, and it was hard for him, right? But here we are 30 years later, learning the very thing that he was trying to warn us was coming down the pike. They started with the music business, because you know what? People don't get too much into the weeds of the music. They just want to hear the music. They don't get into the weeds of the business part of it. But the media, and he also warned us about how the stuff with the internet and the technology was going to fare into this. But now that so many people are content creators and getting these deals and things to do media, this is big news, and we should have stopped this a long 30 years ago when we got the warning, right? Because the fact that Paramount is going to swallow up Warner Brothers and Warner Discovery and all of these things, and they're being allowed to do so with the help of the federal government, because the president wants to control CNN, because he wants to control news media, should scare us all, because we're looking at once people get used to this, it is then easier for them to take away our First Amendment rights.
Dr. Thatcher, are you still with us?
I'm here. I'm here.
You want to lean in?
Sure. I'd love to lean in. In fact, I'm on the edge of my seat. We talked about this.
Oh boy. Okay, here we go.
We talked about this a fair amount yesterday. At 102 million, it's not a number, but I'm making it one now. 102 million% agree with Aisha. This has always been a thing, though. I see it is different, a little bit different now because of the political climate that we're in. However, every year, every semester, what ends up happening is they change our books. Excuse me, they change our books for media because somebody bought up this, somebody bought up that. This is no longer the case. That is no longer the case. So media changes really from week to week, but significantly we can see changes every 6 months. So the map that I used to use to show my students who owns what in media has shifted significantly, but it's always the same. There have ever only been 5 companies that own all the media. So it's always been this way. I'm not advocating for that or saying it's right, because I think it lessens consumer choice. And that is, at the end of the day, that's who matters, the viewers and the consumers. This is a little bit different of a case because you've got the state trying to control media now, to control the narrative. And so this way it becomes a tool of the state rather than a place for the people. So we have that, and this is something that has been going on for years. It doesn't excuse it, but this is nothing new. I just wanted to add that in.
Okay.
Yeah.
Voila.
Well, the whole point of this is to control the narrative. The whole point is just to control their narrative, to put out the propaganda that they want to see. We've already seen what he's done tonight night show hosts, and people are kowtowing to what he wants for that. The next thing you know, all of the educational programming will be that, what is that, Turning Point garbage that they all put out, like slavery was good and it benefited everyone. But this is their whole agenda. There is nothing surprising about this. We knew it was coming. We saw it was coming. It was written about in Project 2025 before it was even called Project 2025. They want to control absolutely everything. And then what do? We are addicted. Okay. America has become such a consumer of news and media and TikTok and all this stuff that it's very easy to control people's minds when they can put in front of you 24/7 things that make you all of a sudden start changing your beliefs. And it doesn't happen overnight. You know, there's always going to be something that's your brain is going to push back. But after a while, that subliminal message gets in there and you no longer ask those questions. And unfortunately, I feel a lot of Americans are lazy and they just don't want to do their research. Yeah. So this whole thing is about just making sure that their narrative gets put in front of us and feeds the young minds, because let's face it, America, what do you do when these babies are born? I don't want to hear nothing, because I see it all the time. Soon as these babies are out of the womb, y'all are throwing a phone or an iPad in front of them. And so they're mesmerized. And immediately now you have kids throwing tantrums because they don't have their tablets. So this is the plan. You see how deep this goes. This is more than just a merger. This is all about controlling your mind, controlling the narrative, and putting that propaganda out. This is the modern day way of what they did in World War II and World War I, where they would drop pamphlets on people. This is the same thing, but this is now including the technology. This is not good. And I'm sorry, y'all, I'm gonna tell y'all from the very beginning, when all this was going on and they were supposed to be going with that other company and Netflix was talking about, no, I don't think we're gonna go with them. I said, watch. Well, watch, they're gonna flip. And that's exactly what they did.
Well, here's the thing, right? The first thing that I hear yesterday after this is that they're calling, they're gonna look at changing CNN to Fox 2.
That's not going to work. That's not business wise. It's not.
Well, yeah, because guess what? CNN Donald Trump wants it gone. They will fire everybody and repopulate it with the people who will say what he wants them to say. Here's the thing, Lala, to your point, not just is it the babies. I don't know what I was reading, but the wildlife is now becoming obsessed with our technology. They're talking about the apes and the chimpanzees in zoos, and like people like getting their phones stolen by, just that and like the scrolling behavior. But also too, I think the one thing that we have to look at, who's going to come out the winner in all this, it's going to be Netflix. Because
yes, that's one winner. I've got some others that I want to.
Paramount, remember what Paramount did with Colbert and everybody, and what all these companies tried to do with what Disney tried to do with Jimmy Kimmel. People aren't going to like the shift from what they now know to propaganda TV on most stations. And where will they go? Netflix is happy to be. We're right here. We're waiting in line. We've got all these shows come. You want to see this, you want to see that, and while all this is going on, Paramount is going to have to. All these companies that are under Paramount are going to have to buck to declining their diversity in programming. Netflix has the freedom to do that. Guess what? People who are of color, who are gay, trans, whatever, disabled, we got money too. We subscribe to these things too, and we will go where we will see people who will look like us. And honestly, I think the guy from Netflix, he went to the White House to tell him, no, I'm not going to do it. Because here's where the overstep was. He tried to tell them to fire Susan Rice. Mm-hmm. And that was the line. Oh, you're not going to be, no, this is not worth it if you're going to be able to tell us who we can and cannot hire. We are a private business. If the government can go into that big private business and tell them who they can and cannot hire, all you small business owners need to pay attention and be worried, because if they can do it to the big ones, they can do it to you.
Okay.
Well, look at the narrative, and let me just say this.
Well, Lala, then Dr. Tachi.
I'm sorry, Dr. Tachi, I didn't hear you. You have to look at that narrative in other ways as well, because sometimes you forget about things like that. So Aisha made a point, like, okay, if they're coming after the big ones first, what's going to happen to the mom and pops? Mm-hmm. Exactly the same thing that happened with Walmart gobbling up all the things that these mom and pop stores had, and now there are no mom and pops. Now we're stuck with all these big corporations because they sucked up absolutely everything, and now we're all stuck. Okay, so it's really becoming extremely hard to even find other means of replacing these when you want to boycott or you no longer want to support them, because they have gobbled up so many things that their hand is in absolutely everything. And this is the struggle that a lot of people are having right now, in the fact that what happened with OpenAI? What happened with, Amazon is now telling us that we shouldn't be owning our own TVs and stuff. Well, look at how much they've sucked up. And now a lot of times we don't have the options to go to the smaller mom and pops because they don't have the means or they don't have the technology to be just as good as those big corporations. So when that's a true warning that Aisha just threw at you, that you really need to sit down and think about, because this is here. It's not coming, it's here.
Go ahead, Dr. Tachi, then I'll chime in with some viewer comments and thoughts. Go ahead.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, part of the reason this is happening, we're talking about coming after the smaller companies. Well, this is because the larger companies have kowtowed and they didn't need to. If we look in every single case, they did these things preemptively before the government ever said anything about them doing anything. So if we look in the case of Stephen Colbert, even though comments were made offhandedly, there was no directive to do this, right? With Netflix, yes, there was that directive with Susan Rice. But for everyone else, there was no directive. With Colbert, with Jimmy Kimmel, those types of things. ABC preemptively pulled him off the air. Nobody said to do that. So when you are already giving away your power, why wouldn't they try and take more? And of course, 100%, it does not bode well for everyone else that's smaller. So that's the thing there. And then the other thing, to your point of, well, Lala, when you were talking about World War II and them dropping pamphlets, here's what I think the difference is. And then younger people being affected by this. Here's the difference. Number one, during that time, there were no choices in terms of how we got content. So you either went with what was on the radio. TV was not huge at that time. TV was actually invented in 1938, but because of all the war effort and they needed the resources to go to making arms and wartime production rather than television sets, we didn't see that. So we didn't see a big resurgence, not even a resurgence, or a surge in television until after World War II was over. That's why they call TV 1950s the golden age of television. Everybody had come back, and now there's this expansion to the suburbs. You're not in town anymore. You want a way to watch content. In comes the television, and the wars are over, supposedly. So there we go. That's the age of television. So we're talking about what else was around at that time? Radio, theater, etc. So you had very few avenues by which to get information, and that means a concentration of people that we can inculcate with whatever we want. Now it is very fragmented. We tend to be in entertainment silos. There are millions of ways, almost literally. Let me take it back a little. Thousands, right? Thousands of ways for you to get information. And the younger people are not checking for the information coming from these people. So fine, go. You know what? Go ahead. Buy all NBCC gets, buy them all. Nobody cares because the people, the younger people, they're not watching that anyway. They're getting their information from YouTube, and so this is why we have to be careful with TikTok. This was another reason for wanting to control TikTok.
Yeah.
They'll buy their rubbish of why. This was also another reason of trying to control that. They know that this is where another segment of the population lives. But I think that we have to give a little bit of credit to Gen Z and to Gen Alpha. You know, everybody, a lot of people, the major cohort that is over there. We have to give them a little bit of credit. I think even though we say what we say about them, I think they have a modicum of sense to know when they're being inoculated, inculcated. I think a little bit of sense. So I think when we prioritize indie, this is where it's going to come from, because they're really concentrating right now on mainstream media, not understanding that that's not where a large portion of the population is anymore.
All right. If I'm just gonna jump in here with some quick comments. Starlight sends straight from Cat says, yeah, this is scary. Also says R.I.P. Prince. Kofi Coates says there's nothing new under this. There's nothing new under the sun. History repeats itself. We just need to pay attention. April Watson's haven't seen you in a minute says, speak purple fam, speak on it. Jen Meyer says, streaming will change so much. I wonder how fewer streaming services with many joining together will affect the cost for, consumers, which I'm going to talk about in just a second. You're reading my alleged mind. Also, Kofi Coates says all flights, this is in Toronto, to the Middle East, to Toronto, from Toronto, have been canceled. All right. I'm going to just do a quick thing. I don't share my thoughts a little bit, but in this merger, to me, the losers, the consumer, because prices are going to go up.
Yeah.
And the diversity of programming is going to get narrower. Everyone who works at CNN, and ironically, a few days ago, Anderson Cooper said he was leaving CBS News. Well, looks like he'll probably end up leaving CNN also. Also, I think
he's Gloria Vanderbilt's son. He'll be fine.
Yeah, but I also think Paramount's going to be a loser, and I'm going to tell you why. And Dr. Tachi, and I'm sure ladies also, the history of these mergers never works out good, because Warner Brothers a few years ago was bought by AT&T. That was a disaster. They had to sell it off, and Paramount is going to incur so much debt with this merger. It's going to be crazy. There's going to be backlash, etc. The winners, Ted Sarandos of Netflix, for having the interest. Say, you know what? Walk away. He walked away from the deal. Plus, he may want to go after Disney. Hello. Also another winner, and I think the other big winner, the gentleman who is the chairman of Warner Brothers, who was able to rise the sell price from $7 to $31.
Yeah.
Genius move.
And I want to say this too.
Okay, who wants to go first? Aisha or Dr. Tetra?
Well, I want to say this too. Americans, I encourage everyone to watch TV outside of America. Really? because the thing is that you don't realize how much of our media enterprise, not just the news, I'm talking about all of the other shows and things that people like to watch, are very much directed in one direction. There's a direction, right? There is, and here's the thing that comes with trying to get rid of DEI and control of that stuff, is that it also controls creativity. The same plot lines will keep showing up in all your shows. The same few actors and actresses will keep showing up in all your shows. Look, and I mean, I think not only that, but it's also the thing I learned in watching TV from other places. There is an emphasis on excess. that is novel to American television, American film, American media that you do not see in other countries. And it is so refreshing. Let me tell you something. That's what I do most. I have short windows of watching news, morning, night. That's it. The rest of the time, I don't even watch our TV because a lot of the shows are so stale. There's no creativity there. And I mean, I'm watching shows globally: South America, Africa, Canada, Europe, Australia, New Zealand, China, Japan. And it is refreshing to see, wow, there's difference. But it also teaches you something about humanity and teaches you about how people live in other places. It also teaches you how people view you, and to the point that you learn you're the stinky kid in the class.
We're back to that. Dr. Tachi, last comment on this one.
Not the unfresh child in the project. Poor unfresh child. So you were talking about the big winners of this.
Go ahead, Dr. Tachi.
And I'm just imagining that child smells like ham sub with onions. He's unfresh.
Yeah. Bologna. Yeah.
Look, will you two stop? We're going to lose Lala if you keep on going with this. Like, she's about ready to fall over back first in her chair, and her feet will be up in the air, kicking and screaming.
Yeah.
Okay, we're going to send the unfresh child to a spa on us. So the other big winner in this, you mentioned some, but I know I keep harping on this point. YouTube is the other big winner.
Yes.
Now, it remains to be seen what Google is going to do and whether or not they're going to come after Google and levy pressure on them. Yes, no, we know they will, but it remains to be seen how much and what. But as of right now, that is a place that is separate from this. Think about this. You don't need the FCC pulling a license. What license? YouTube is basically like an Amazon for content.
Yeah.
They don't necessarily run any of the content themselves. It is, and I'm not talking about YouTube TV. And even with YouTube TV, there are marketplaces and an aggregator. They are not producing content right now at this point. At one time, they were producing some original content, but they're not doing it now. So the threat of, well, I'm going to pull your license is not there. That is the beauty of this thing, that they can really bypass a lot of these things. It doesn't mean they can bypass the FCC, but they can bypass some of this licensure nonsense. No, it's not nonsense, but the licensure, they can bypass that. Mm-hmm. So this is what I see happening. To talk to everybody's points, I really see that not just the independents rising, but independents rising away from organized media in general.
Right.
Because you don't own any of this. YouTube even can decide we don't like what you're saying and then pull it without recourse. And you've sat there and built things. And so that's why it's like you are building a house on rented land.
Yes.
I'm not saying not to do that, but you ought to have something you own too. So if the landlord decides to evict you, that's fine. I'm going to my house that I own with the audience that I built. Kev on Stage is an amazing example of this. So if you know Kev on Stage, who was a comedian and actor that really started online, did his stuff online. He's a stand-up comedian, but he built a whole thing. So of course he uses social media to disseminate the messages, but he also has an app where he has content. So he owns his audience. I'm part of the Patreon group. So he'll put special stuff up for those of us in Patreon, right? And Patreon is a different type of thing than a YouTube. It's like people are actually, they have free content, they have paid content, that type of thing. So you are setting the prices for that. Not Lala, but Aisha's point of looking internationally, yes. before I got on here with you lovely people, I was watching the Brit Awards. And if you don't know the Brit Awards, that is the equivalent of the Grammys in the UK. So I was watching, they opened up with Harry Styles, right? Who's British, but he's a huge international star. Then the next person was, a newer person on the scene, Olivia Dean. She performed and she got an award. I think it was Song of the Year she got. So the point of all of me saying this is that there are so many avenues for content that are not US based. And the fact that I can tune into the Brit Awards and know the people that are there. Of course, there were some bands and some artists I didn't know because I don't live in the UK, but there were enough that I did know to show that there are forces in entertainment that go beyond US borders that we can all still identify with. And then finally, you were talking about, in terms of international, Korean shows. So anytime I watch something on Netflix now, I started watching a Korean series, a Korean series called King the Land. Now I get all sorts of Asian content, etc., that will pop up for me, which now exposes me to other types of things. And that's the beauty, as we were talking about, in terms of Netflix as well. It's not just Netflix is a hub for international content. And they're trying to make themselves even more of a hub for international content. That's not what you get when you watch CNN, when you watch any of the network here. It's so insular. And that's the thing. If you really, and it ties together with being a global person. If you really want to be a global person and have global perspectives, you ought to ingest content from elsewhere as well. And that's going to be the difference between the people who are just down in the gutter and the people who evolve out of this.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
I do want to recommend a Nigerian show that I like called Castle and Castle. They don't have any new seasons, but I went back and I binged all of them. It's excellent. It's like it's a family of lawyers. It's like a soap opera. That and Brokenwood Mysteries out of New Zealand. I love them.
Okay. All right. Aisha and Lala, one story or two more stories?
One.
Okay, I know which one we're going to pick then. All right, because we were going to talk about it last week. We didn't get to it last week. We're going to talk about it now. All right, so one more conversation piece, and we're going to do an intro to it right now, and I think it's a beautiful way to end off this conversation.
From the pulpit to the pavement, the story of Reverend Jesse Jackson is a story of a movement, one that bridges the civil rights struggles of the 1960s with the political activism of today. Born in Greenville, South Carolina in 1941, Jackson rose from humble beginnings to become one of Dr. Martin Luther King Jr.'s key lieutenants in the Southern Christian Leadership Conference. When King was assassinated, Jackson didn't step back, he stepped forward, founding Operation Push in Chicago to promote economic empowerment, education, and self-determination for Black Americans. Through the 1970s and 80s, Reverend Jackson redefined what Black leadership looked like. His Rainbow Push Coalition united people across lines of race, religion, and class, teaching that liberation was not just a Black struggle, but a human one. In 1984 and 1988, Jackson made history with his groundbreaking runs for President of the United States. He didn't just run, he expanded the political imagination of a nation, paving the way for future Black leaders, including Barack Obama. His campaign slogan, "Keep Hope Alive," became a rallying cry for justice and progress. Even now, Reverend Jackson's legacy continues to echo through grassroots movements for voting rights, economic justice, and racial equality. His lifelong work reminds us that liberation isn't a moment, it's a mission. Jesse Jackson didn't only preach hope, he organized it, mobilized it, and turned it into action. His story urges us all to keep hope alive and keep the movement moving forward.
All right, Jesse Jackson legacy, Black liberation lives on. Who wants to start?
No, I will. One of the things I think we have to keep in mind as we're in the moment that we're in this country about people like Jesse Jackson and especially his organizational skills and rallying people to a cause is that the marches and the protests, they were just a mechanism. The real work was done behind the scenes. The real work was done diplomatically, working with people, right? And I think that when we're talking about going back to our very first discussion, I think people forget that if you really wanted diplomacy, you don't send a Jared Kushner, you send somebody like a Jesse Jackson. People forget how many people Jesse Jackson got out of being prisoners of war, American citizens being prisoners of war, using his diplomacy skills and negotiating that way. Because I feel like the people don't really understand the work part of what he did. They know the appearances, the speeches, and that part, but the work part of what he did, what Andrew Young called the dirty work of running those things, and it just, it was a life well lived. Did he stumble? Of course, we all stumble, but the mission of the work never changed. He was really about freedom and liberation for all people. And I think that, you don't get a Barack Obama without Jesse Jackson getting closer and closer across 2 elections.
Lala?
I think that people like to move on too quick and forget history too quick. I mean, Jesse Jackson had been in the struggle for many, many years. This is not something that all of a sudden he just came on the scene. We have to remember that a lot of us grew up with him. He truly did help the Black struggle from private pain, turned it into like public policy. So he did that by organizing in a style that spoke to the people, that really rang true, not just in America, but also globally. He pushed for economic power in our communities, but he also did that with giving us a sense of pride. When you think of Jesse Jackson, I always hear, I am somebody. Like that is my thing. And when I think of his name, that's the first thing that I think of. He was, and just as Aisha said, everybody stumbles, but the good in this man outweighs so much other than what people are going to try to overshadow. And I feel like America just announced that he was gone, and then the next thing you know, the next story, he was lost in the whirlwind. We need to make sure that we do honor those who have fought so hard for us to be able to walk through many doors. Because yes, he did run for president, but he also opened the door so Barack Obama could do the same thing. So, he empowered children. This I am somebody wasn't necessarily just for adults, baby. He went for the babies because he knew that if you could get them at that level, then you had them. And the Rainbow Coalition, everything that he did for the people. And I just wanted to make sure that we didn't pass on this story of losing a great man, because he does deserve his flowers and his accolades. And I am grateful that we now have him in our arsenal of people that we can cherish, and then pick up the banner. That's the part. You got to pick up the banner of where they left off and continue to run the race. Now more than ever, because of the situation that we're in, we should never shy away from what is being put on us or put oppression upon our communities. Remember what he said, I am somebody. Pick up the banner and walk with that pride.
And just one more thing I want to remind people is that we're getting to a point where there are fewer and fewer people alive who were part of that struggle, but also who worked with Martin Luther King.
Dr. Tachi, any words?
Yes. So, well, first, let me say how proud I am of you, Dr. Vibe, for all of the wonderful intros to these segments. I'm like, go ahead, Dr. Vibe.
Thank you.
Absolutely. So I think the important thing to do here is definitely show reverence and remembrance and pride in the history of Jesse Jackson. But as Lala was saying, using this as a platform to continue, not just continue linearly, but step up and rise up and do more. The thing that gets me when we're very stuck on having one per person or several people, maybe a group of people to lead us. And we don't, now that I'm looking at the different headlines and now the different think pieces of, well, you know, this is the end of an era, that type of thing. And definitely so. But all eras are meant to end. And we're meant to move on using the lessons that we learned from people like Reverend Jackson to move on. So definitely, as Lala said, the question now is, what do we do? How do we carry on? What lessons do we take to help us continue the fight? And one thing that I think about with all of these leaders, all of the civil rights leaders there, it was never a thing about them. They were not self-proclaimed leaders. People pushed them into leadership because they exhibited the qualities that leaders have. So it's not something that they said, I'm going to be in charge of this or a leader of that, right? For the most part, they were guided there and they kind of took up the mantle. So if you look at, for example, the Rainbow Coalition, the key word there is coalition. It was never about one person. It was never about just him. It is a cohort or a coalition of people looking to make a change. So I think when we look at our civil rights leaders, some of whom are not here with us anymore, we need to look at, and we ought to look at, what they did to encompass the entire community in this. And really the message there is, it's all of us working together to make this change. It was never about these one individual. So yes, this one individual, Reverend Jackson, may have been a defining moment and a defining person in the movement, but I think he would want us to recognize that it's about all of us. It's about the collective, the coalition.
Yeah.
Well, I'll just end off this segment really short and sweet. I remember a young Dr. Vibe watching CBS News when I don't know if it was Jesse Jackson's first speech as a presidential candidate or his second speech as a presidential candidate. I remember, and I'll never forget this, Dan Rather saying, gather everybody around. You're going to hear and listen to someone who is special. And what he said, ended off with I am, but how Dan Rather gave him that introduction and how Jesse Jackson just rose to the occasion. It was one of those moments he said, gather everybody around.
Yeah.
Gather everybody around and make sure you listen, because he said he made it like a historic moment. And there's not too many people who could deliver a speech like Jesse Jackson then and even now. So I think that's my memory. I still remember being young and he said, everyone please gather on. Dan Rather says, I'm going to see if I can get that clip and see if I can get Dan Rather's introduction. I think that would be quite meaningful. Got a comment here. Eddie Jumba. Pastor Eddie is here. Thank you for celebrating Reverend Jesse Jackson. May his soul rest eternally in peace. Thank you for sharing all your wisdom and receive your flowers. Now from me, I appreciate you all. Thank you, Eddie.
Thank you.
Appreciate that. That is a beautiful way to end off today. Well, ladies, as usual, hit it out of the park. Bam! Like bam! Dr. Tachi, as always, thank you for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
Oh, you got a seat here. You don't even go there. You've got a seat here always. All right, let me ask, how can people get in touch with you, Dr. Tachi?
A great way is at Dr._Tachi on Instagram. You can send me a message there. That's also the handle for me on most social media. And in case you didn't know, I am the founder of Indie Soup Media, which is an independent network for independent content creators. You can view all of the wonderful content on YouTube at Indie Soup Media.
Thank you so much, Dr. Tachi. Next up, the key.
It's the key. I made it easy for you to follow me. You just go to my website at laurakey.net. I have a lot of really great resources there. If you are thinking about becoming a world citizen, there is a lot that goes into that. And it's not just something that you wake up and you go, oh, yeah, I'm going to do this today. So I actually have a very thoughtful quiz. You can download that on my website to help you decide, hey, is this something for me? Am I here at the point? Do I have to plan, or no, this ain't my thing? So please go there. Make sure you download that. I also have something to help you to calm your mind a little bit, and I had so much fun putting together. So please go to my Etsy store, which is at Etsy shop Living the La La Life. I have beautiful affirmation coloring books that will help you to calm your mind and get you some color in your world and just dream a little bit. So please visit my store and support there as well.
Excellent, excellent. And I was chatting with someone today, and I told them about you. I said, I'd like to have a conversation with Lala. So one's coming. There we go. All right. And it's Aisha Case Tagger's time.
Those are all of my things, but I haven't been on anything too much. So the best way to find me is if you join the Discord, because I actually do respond there.
There you go.
Yeah.
All right.
You can read my stuff on Medium. But again, I'm taking me time.
Well done. All right. Thank you so much. Appreciate that. All right. With myself, all you need to get a hold of me is the easiest way, one link. And I learned that from Lala, but now she's got a whole bunch of links going on. But I learned that from Lala. So it's taplink.cc/the DRVIBESHOW. And that's where you can find all the things about me. So let's do a little bit of a round off. As always, join the Primetime Saturday with Aisha and Lala Discord group. As Aisha mentioned, please email me at dr.vibe@thedrvibeshow.com or hit the link that you see there, but it's in the comments section on most of the platforms you watch this or live. Also, subscribe to the Dr. Vibe Show on YouTube and hit notification button. I am way behind Dr. Tachi's channel in regards to subscribers, but it's a good stretch for me. And like the Dr. Vibe Show on YouTube, Facebook, LinkedIn, Instagram, TikTok, Blue Sky, and Substack. Again, if you want to advertise your business, product, or service on any of the platforms, please feel free to email me at dr.vibe@thedrvibeshow.com. And I think that is, can't forget, you can watch replays of this epic conversation on the Dr. Vibe Show on YouTube, Facebook, LinkedIn, and also the Dr. Vibe website, the drvibeshow.com. Also want to shout out some people who liked this conversation on different platforms. There's DMXJ James. There is Eddie Jumba. Thank you, Eddie. I have to touch base with you on some stuff. There's Mary Jo Allen and also Soraya Machado Powell. Now, if I said anyone's name wrong, it's my head, not my heart. And also a big shout out to Ming, who was helping out today in regards to a lot of the video promo production and handling the comments. So appreciate you big time, Ming. So as always, live your life as a dream. If you can dream it, you can make it. Sometimes you have to get smaller to get stronger. Block assumptions. Aim bigger, aim better, aim higher, aim wider. Love, faith, and respect. Don't just manage your time, manage your energy. Remember to give yourself grace. And if you're not making money, make history and make it better. God bless. Peace throughout. Keep the faith, walk good, and stay safe. Oh, I think before I do one other thing. Oh, Jen Meyer said, great show. Thank you, Jen. And Eddie Jumba, I don't know. It looks like a half an emoji there. I don't know what it is, but we'll take it. It looks like it's a smiling face. All right. So we are done. We'll see you soon again. Stay safe and give yourself grace.